question is pretty easy one here for you, I'm sure. In your new book, what do you mean by get off your knees?
Well, it's funny because the title came to me about a year ago, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. I was putting a talk together, and I was doing this sequence about how people acquiesce to authority, acquiesce to belief systems. And I kept putting these pictures together, and everyone was on their bloody knees, basically, in different ways, but often literally on their knees. And I thought, that's the thing, we are on our knees. And it's another interesting thing that I noticed, that to have your head in the sand, you have to be on your knees. Physically, you have to, but not just physically, mentally and emotionally. Getting off your knees is also getting your head out the sand and looking around and seeing what's happening, as opposed to what you're told is happening, where most people get their perceptions from. But what I found is that it's really struck a chord. Not just, yes, human race, get off your knees, but people thinking, hold on a second, I am on my knees, aren't I? I get up in the morning and I go to work and I'm stuck in that place. I can't leave until I'm allowed to leave, and then I get stuck in a traffic jam on the way home. My kids get up in the morning, they go to school, they can't go out of that place, they're in prison as well all day, they're told what to do all day, just as I have to do what I'm told all day, and that we call this life. I am on my knees, and it's like in the Matrix movie, where it's like the first step to freedom is realizing you're not free. That's the real first step, because we have systems all over the place that is designed to make us feel we're free, and we have a say in things, like we have a vote. My view is everyone to their own. Don't vote, it only encourages them, because the people that are demanding our votes to have at least some level of power over us have no contract with us whatsoever. They can say what the hell they like, which is what they think we want to hear. They then get voted into power. There is no contract whatsoever to then fulfill what they've said they are going to do for our support. It's like we're in this period now of where it's becoming more and more blatant. I learned 20 years ago now, when I first started to wake up, that there was a vibrational change coming. It was the first things I realized through various means. And my first book was called Truth Vibrations, which was named after this vibrational change. And what I was told was this vibrational change was going to awaken people from their mass hypnotic state, and also was going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden, so that we could see what we couldn't see before. Now all that's clearly happening, and an expression of that is that things are becoming more blatant. And what I'm talking about here is Barack Obama, because you had a person whose whole approach, sales pitch for over a year was changing. It never said what it was, because if it had gone into detail, he wouldn't have probably got elected. But by making himself a blank screen, change, people were able to project upon him what they perceived that change was. He allowed himself to become all things to all people. Where I'm going with this, however, is that it was so blatant, so extreme, change, that people genuinely thought they were making a difference by voting for some kind of change. Now, what's happened is it's business as usual. It's just another version of Bush. Why? Because if you go from Bush and Obama up a little bit, you find the same people. And what's kind of encouraging for me is when you see where Obama was in November 2008, you'd think his honeymoon period would go on for years. It didn't. It was going down very, very quickly into 2009. And so people are beginning to see and see through the illusions of choice, the illusions that they can make a difference because you live in a free country which is dictated by the people. These things are starting, and in America, of course, even more than Britain and Europe, although we've had some of it there, Americans, right the way from the creation of the country, have been bombarded generation about this is the land of the free, this is the freest country in the world. And when I first came here and I kept hearing this, I kept thinking, well, why do the authorities have to keep telling Americans how free they are? Shouldn't it be bloody obvious? And I saw things like my country's kind of diabolical in terms of freedom now, Britain, but and that's my country, it's where I was born, it's where I live. But I came to America and really started to travel in 1996, and I couldn't believe how unfree it was compared with what we were told. But it's all subliminal. It's been subliminal. What's happening? It's becoming conscious in more and more people, and this is great because the first stage is, hey, I'm not free, am I? Hey, I am a slave, am I? Hey, I am on my knees, am I? And that's the first stage, and that's when you choose which pill am I going to take. Am I going to stay being like that, or am I going to say, not only stage one, I realise I'm a slave, two, I ain't having it. And that stage is starting to move, and you're going to be amazing years coming up. The next six, 7 years, fantastic challenges, amazing transformations for the better.
Yeah, you know, to quote Einstein, he said, "We will never solve problems from the same level of consciousness that created them." And as I look at the world we live in, and the people who appear to be making the decisions, it does indeed appear that we are making it worse with every solution we come up with. Could it be that we have simply constructed a civilization that is unsustainable and needs to collapse?
It needs to collapse, yes, and what Einstein said is patently obvious when you look at the political system. In every country, you have political parties. Now, why did they create political parties? Because if we had a society in which people, if we had political systems as we do now, put themselves forward as individuals based on their own attitudes, their own beliefs and what they want to do, that would create hundreds and hundreds of people in Congress that had no point of connection or coordination. The coordination would be, you want this change in society, okay, that's fine. Now you've got to persuade these individual minds that that's a good thing. Instead, they create political parties because they're controllable. So like in Britain and America, in Britain we have things called whips in the political parties, and these whips are named after a, or maybe it's the other way around, whatever. If a party, whether it's in government or opposition, wants to either bring in legislation or oppose it, they send out communications to all their members of parliament in that party. And a one underline is a one-line whip. That means we'd like you to vote the way we're telling you to vote. Two-line whips, we'd really like you to vote this way. Three-line whips, you do want a political career, don't you? You know? And so because of that, if you want to progress in a political party, then you have to basically serve the party hierarchy so that you'll progress. And if you're a rebel, well, you won't. And most people, they put personal power and progress, as they see progress, above doing what they know to be right or believe to be right. Through this structure, you've got basically different groups, different constructs called political parties, which can be made overwhelmingly to move as one unit. So the top can dictate how the rest of it moves. So now already you're in a situation where a tiny few people at the top of the hierarchy of the party are dictating how that party votes and responds in political debate. Now, if you want legislation through, you've not got to get hundreds of individual minds to see that actually it's good for the people. All you've got to do is get the hierarchy to dictate to the party structure that you're all going to vote for this or else. And these structures, whether they're called Democrats or Republicans, Labour or Conservative, whatever, are the same consciousness. I was in politics in the Green Party for a short time, if you can call that politics, and I saw that this Green Party in Britain, or as a national spokesman for a few years, claimed to be different. It had a different colour, it had a different name, it said it was coming from a different point of view, and I saw that it was a blueprint, a political blueprint. It's like a vibrational resonance. And all these different parties call themselves the same vibrational resonance. So what you do is you replace the Republicans, who have a certain level of consciousness, with the Democrats, who are pretty much the same level of consciousness. They make a pig's ear of it. These come in saying, we'll put it right, but they're the same level of consciousness as them, so they make a bigger pig's ear of it, and then these come in because of that bigger pig's ear, and so it goes on. And this is why this consciousness shift that we're going through, it's going through, more and more people are anyway, and it's really going to gather in the next 6 to 10 years, big time, is so vital, because unless we have a shift of consciousness, and we move our point of observation of things, then nothing's going to change, because any what we call world is always a collective reflection of the collective level of awareness and consciousness of the people. And we've been through a period of incredibly stupid levels of what we call consciousness, and you know, the inmates have taken over the asylum. They're called politicians and bankers and all this stuff. Now we've got a chance to move on. But you're absolutely right. If this system does not collapse, it will of course suffocate at birth anything. We've seen it happen. Anything trying to get in, and it needs to crash. And this is why those who started to awaken a bit are the lucky ones, really, because they can at least see that this has to go before something better can come in. What people who are still stuck in what I call 5 sense reality, which is still the majority, they're not going to see that. They're going to see that. All hell's breaking loose in the world. What's going on? It's going to be very challenging for them.
I think one of the things that's important is, if our civilization is falling, like every other civilization in the past has done, then I almost see this as an opportunity, because if it's going to fall, maybe we should do a controlled demolition. And that's almost what I see people like you doing, is like, if this thing has to fall, why not control it while we still have some infrastructure to start rebuilding a new society in a new kind of a way?
That's a very good point. We're at a point now where it's kind of funny. It's like there's different levels of looking at the same thing. I have to snigger to myself from time to time when I see it unfolding, because you've got a control system and the families behind it who are seeking to crash the system. We're talking about the economic system, for instance, but many others, because they want to use that, in the term that I use, problem, reaction, solution, to replace the status quo with a much more centralized global dictatorship in finance. They want a world central bank, they want a world government, they want a world currency. But of course, to bring something radically new in, the status quo has to not be working, or perceived not to be working. Because if it's working, and they say, we're going to bring this, hold on a second, everything's fine, go and have a beer, go away, leave it alone. But if it's perceived that this is not working, then they have the opportunity to say, it's not working, look, it's a big collapse, we've got to do this, central bank, world central bank, world government, all this stuff. So on that level, the inner core of the global manipulation is seeking to crash it. But it's like the control system mentality is only at one level of awareness, and it's quite a very low level of awareness. Anyone who wants power over is suffering from desperate insecurity, and so he's not at a very high level of consciousness. The way that controls humanity, which is capable of that, is to hold it in a smaller box than it's in. So it's here and it's saying, we're going to crash the economy, we're going to do this and all that stuff, and then we're going to bring in this new world order. Yeah, because we're in control and they're there and they don't understand. What these don't understand is the level of awareness here, that he's actually playing this out. And what's happening here, from this perspective of the control system mentality, ain't actually what's happening. Because while they think they're crashing it to bring in an even more fierce replacement, what's actually happening is they're playing out a scenario of the system now crashing, and that gives us the opportunity to go in another direction. And what we need to do as fast as possible is to get people who are seeing that the world's not like they thought it was, who are seeing this blatant corruption and lack of empathy for the consequences of this banking crash, where bigger bonuses are paid to bankers who've been bailed out by the people who are having to fund the bigger bonuses and all this stuff. It's that instead of reacting with protest and riots, which just give the control system an excuse to increase the imposition of a military domestic law enforcement, we instead of just protesting, we stop cooperating, because the number of people in full awareness who are manipulating this 7 billion people are a tiny fraction, and so small they have to recruit from the target population for the law enforcement and administration to enforce their agenda. So the power is with the people. What this control system does, and has done all through this period, is get the public to perceive that they have no power and the power's here. So people then give their power away. It's like the school bully. Oh, you can't take on the school bully because you get beat up. Well, I've taken on school bullies, and when you take them on and face them up, they just fall apart, because it's all perception rather than substance. And this control system has so few people in full awareness that are doing it, that when the people turn and see it and cease to cooperate with it, this is just going to disappear. Very quickly, actually, because it has no power. It's persuaded people that it has power, therefore people give it power. And it's important that to get across that just protesting about the way the system's falling, to prop it up and just tinker with it, like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. We should more to take more from the bankers and give more to the... Well, yeah, but that's tinkering with it. It's not that the system is flawed in detail. It's the system is flawed in its entirety. And so we're at this very exciting and challenging time where in theory this could go either way. We could go further into the control system. I say we won't ultimately, although we might seem to like it for a few years, or we can take this opportunity to completely